Uh, so, you've all talked over lunch about how to solve this problem, right? We now have a whole collection of potential solutions. So, to remind you, given this picture, we want to do a whole bunch of things. So, we want to figure out what are the species of animals that are in this picture, trying to sort of identify the boundaries of each animal, figure out maybe who that animal is, and also what the various demographic aspects or the viewpoint and the female, male, age, all of these things, if we can. Okay, and so actually, before we continue, I'm gonna switch this because it's not working very well. Yeah, okay, much better. So, the way, so as I said, if all we wanted to do is just to say there are zebras in this picture, that is standard. That is a standard classification problem. We could just really take this and run it through some deep convolutional neural net and give it a whole bunch of. In fact, that thing is a pixel classification problem. It's a pixel level classification problem because you give it a whole bunch of pictures and examples, training examples where you click and say zebra, 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 not zebra, not zebra, not zebra, right? And so you can, in fact, probably with enough examples and enough good different examples and a good spread, you can solve this. You can probably train this a little bit further, but at some point things start breaking. And the thing is that the identification problem of who is this zebra, that is the hard problem, by far the hardest problem in all of this. So the way we approach this is, because the ultimate goal is to identify who that particular zebra is. So we want to take this and say, oh, this is Zippy. And the thing is, the whole detection pipeline then is geared towards that. So we don't need then to really detect and classify every single zebra, tiny, unidentifiable zebra in the picture. If there are zebras that are hiding somewhere over there, and in fact, they're unidentifiable zebras over there, we don't need to detect them. So we're not focusing on them at all. We also, because we want to identify individual zebras, we may not have to do a perfect segmentation and a perfect boundary identification of each zebra. So it's always, the question is, what are you trying to achieve? And in fact, I was just talking that, as a interdisciplinary computational biologist, computational ecologist, I spend about 80% of my time translating the question that biologists are asking to a good abstraction, good computational abstraction, and figuring out whether I have the right data to answer the question computationally, and if not, how to get it. And then also, once we get an answer, and sometimes it's an answer that already exists computationally, and sometimes I get excited and start jumping up and down, and biologists my colleagues start groaning because they know that they're going to be another 3 years until they have the answer. Because it's a great research question. It's fantastic. I'm so excited, yes. But this translation back and forth, once we have the answer, what it actually means biologically, what it means in the context of the question, and does it actually answer the question initially, that is the biggest amount of time that we spend, and I've learned to be patient. And these collaborations typically, start by biologists. It used to start, now we're kind of have already a good dynamic, but they used to start by biologists. Majority of biologists think that computer scientists are pet programmers, and a lot of the conversations start by, hey, can you write a program that does this? And my answer is often no, what's your question? And computer scientists think that biologists are pet data collectors, and a lot of the conversations start by, hey, can I have your data? And the answer is no. What's your question? Right? And so this figuring out what exactly is the question and that we can solve computationally, because when you tweak the question even a little bit, the computational methods that exist can go from actually very easy to very hard, as you saw in the cartoon. So in this question, to be precise, we want to take a picture like this. So the problem statement ultimately is, and identify as many as possible of the zebras in the picture with high certainty, and overall to minimize the human curation effort required to verify and to process these images, right? So with this goal, now, it's not only that we want to identify individuals, which means we have to classify these images, they look at the classification problem slightly different. We also, the goal is to not to eliminate human effort completely, because there is no chance at all that any research group, conservation group, or managers out there that are going to trust completely, 100%, results of a computational system where no human curation was done, right? So trust is a huge issue that needs to be established in all of this. And quite often, trust is established by both showing that what it means for a computational answer to be absolutely certain with high confidence, and delegating to humans the answers that are uncertain, but minimizing the effort of of humans by minimizing the number of uncertain answers. So the accuracy, the performance metrics are very different in here. The other thing is the identification, and I intentionally spend this time setting up the problem and explaining why is it different from sort of the existing solutions out there. The other part is that the identification problem is not a matching problem. So most things like face recognition out there are a matching problem. You have an example and you're trying to see who it matches in your database. And very rarely you have somebody new, and then you ask humans to sort of to verify, is that a new person, right? But in this context, more than half of the animals that we're seeing, and pretty much all the species that we have now, 20 plus and growing, are seen only once or twice, which means majority of the time, your individual identification problem is not going to be a matching problem. It's going to be the hardest kind of identification to very confidently be able to say this is a new animal. And that one is hard, right? It's hard also computationally because what you don't want to do is you don't want to match to your ever-growing, try to match it to your ever-growing database reference of the existing individuals. You want to do it fast. You want to do it quickly. So the performance metrics, people often ask us, so how accurate is your identification algorithm? We can spend a whole hour talking about the performance metrics that are appropriate in this domain. So let's start actually answering this question. So we start with the input image, and we do straight up standard classification using CNNs of what is out there. Like, so we have maybe 8% Maasai giraffe, reticulated giraffe, sea turtle, maybe. This is, and very confidently we have 97%, we have 45, 97% confident we have plain zebra and 45 gravy zebra. So couple of things here. One is that this classification output is, there's the confidence around the output, but also that we may have multiple species in the, this percentage is the confidence levels that are not, that there is 1 pixel that is, or 1% pixels that are sea turtles. So, okay, after that, we have the annotation localization. And again, if you want to put bounding boxes around each animal, the hard parts are these overlapping boxes, and how do you measure the accuracy, the performance accuracy of this effort, right? We spent enormous amount of time at some point deciding whether when you put a bounding box around a zebra that is obscured, do you put it only around the visible part or around the what you think is the entire body of the zebra, right? So decisions like that actually matter, and they matter also for performance classification. Then from that point, we take for the next one, again, is pretty straightforward CNN of, or your other favorite deep learning classification method of classifying the viewpoint. There are plenty of algorithms out there. They're trained quite often for urban environments, but you can train them for this setting of recognizing that this is left side, and once it's in this particular box, it's a plain zebra, and this is left side or left right. You can also go down to body parts and identify the head and the back and the legs. All right, then we do rough, very, very, very quick background segmentation. Again, yet another layer learning. And then finally, we do annotation of interest classification. And that is important to filter out very quickly what we think is actually identifiable as an individual. So it's important both to count how many zebras there are, so this just gives us the count, and then not all of them are individually identifiable. And so the last step in this process is figuring out which zebras we think are going to be individually identifiable. And the decisions, know that the decisions that we make here have huge implications on the answers that we provide biologically when we're saying, what's the population size of gray zebras? Right? These, and depending on the method, and I'll come back to this, depending on the method that we use to then estimate population size, which of the zebras we decided to identify, what we decided was identifiable out of these 20 zebras there, is going to have huge implications on the numbers that we produce under different assumptions of the models. And so finally, we have this, we go from image to, oh, this is a plain zebra. So this image classification, sorry, the first step is a standard image classification. So we do quite a bit, quite standard data pre-processing for that step. For the bounding boxes, we have to train it for each separate species. So when we, again, so when we tried at the beginning we started with zebras and then to transfer them even to giraffes, it tended to kind of put smaller boxes around the giraffes and cutting off its head, which is kind of, if you think about it, tells you quite a bit of how a giraffe is different from a zebra. And then again, for the viewpoint classification, it's again a single label multi-class classification, but it's pretty straightforward, given enough training data. And for background, we do only coarse segmentation, and we do just a sample of patches because we don't really need very accurate outline of a zebra, because we keep in mind the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to be able to recognize individual zebra. So for bounding boxes, just to be able to count the number of zebras and then to recognize the ones that are recognizable. So you don't need very high precision segmentation. Although now people are starting to ask questions that do require high precision segmentation, and that is every time you have to match the right method to the question. Okay, So we do the rough segmentation based on patches, just sample patches, and that's enough. Okay, so you get this kind of answer out of them. Okay, and so finally, when we do the annotation of interest, we mask it. We mask the bounding box and figure out, train it just to figure out whether it's an individually identifiable zebra. So this one we think we train as a yes, as a positive example, but this mask, which is this zebra, the middle one of the background 3, is at this point not individually identifiable. Okay, and so this entire pipeline, we actually trained it and tested it right now on 20 plus species, but we created a training data set which we made available for 6 species of Maasai giraffe, reticulated giraffe, sea turtle, whale fluke, gravy zebras, and plain zebras, each one with 1,000 images. And it's available. If you want to play with us, you're welcome to it. If you make improvements, let us know. Our code is also open source. You can run against ours. You can compare it to the outcome, and it contains hard examples as well there. Okay, so right. So as I said, to keep in mind that the goal of our entire approach here is to reduce errors and the need for human in the loop when performing animal identification. So it's the animal identification and reduce the human effort. But not to eliminate it, because that eliminates trust as well. And so we want to drive the entire detection pipeline to find the ones that are identifiable. And so we can really go from collections of images like this to asking a question of who is this zebra, right? And saying, oh, that's Zippy the zebra. So how do we do it? So that part actually is not machine learning. It's good old computer vision. And the reason it's not machine learning in the modern sense is because there's not enough data. There's actually not enough data. So, and it is very common, and it's one of the biggest challenges in this domain, that we think that everything is answerable using machine learning approaches. But we have to remember that the bigger your models are, the more training data you will need. Right? So when you, and in this domain, there's quite often not enough data to make any kind of models. So the approach we took was a classic from first in 1990s, developed in computer vision, called using scale invariant feature transform, essentially taking this image and identifying high variability, high pixel value variability points by passing a sort of sliding window matrix over the entire image and computing Hessian transform, and which computes the gradient, right? Essentially, and then you have so this zebra is now covered with ellipsi, where each ellipse is centered around the center of this matrix that we're passing through, and it shows the direction and the scale and the value of the maximum of the largest gradient in that matrix that we're sliding centered at this point. And so the higher the pixel variability that you have in the region, the longer the gradient, right? Because if you think going from white pixel to black pixel, you're going to have steep drop in pixel values. So that's a large gradient. And the beauty of this approach is that, and so if you, let's say you take top 20,000 of this ellipse by some carefully selected criteria. The nice part about it, they right away hone in on high variability, pixel variability areas, but they're also invariant to slight changes in the image position, scale, zoom, various lighting effects, and so on. So this is called scale invariant feature transform, SIFT. So these features have been used, as I said, in computer vision since 1990s. They're very applicable here, and they work very well on animals that have texture differences over their body. So anything striped, spotted, wrinkled, or notched. And so here's, when you have distinct patterns, it clearly picks them up very quickly, and so matches them. And the way we match them, that's we encode the sequence of these hotspots as a vector, which is also the standard approach here. 128-bit vector, and you do quick search for the nearest neighbors. That's all standard. And then we have we have come up with a particular data structure, which is essentially a graph data structure, where you encode the we essentially train another machine learning model for any two images. So we transform the ranking that comes out of the SIFT features, and for any two images, we train a classifier to say, are these two probably the same animal? Are these two not the same animal? Or I have no information. Okay? And so with this yes, no, I don't know graph, what it allows you to do, and I will not go into details too much there, what it allows you to do is very quickly, and in fact exponentially, reduce the error, the misidentification error, which reduces exponentially with the number of animals in your data set, which is completely different from every other error trends, error growth of other algorithms that increase with the number of animals that you have, the probability of an error. And it allows you very quickly to identify those errors as well. And it also transforms something that most of the algorithms do in this space for identification, is they produce a ranking. Oh, given this zebra, this is most likely a ranked list, so this is the highest probability that this is this zebra, maybe it's this zebra, maybe it's that zebra, and so zebra. I've been saying zebra all the time. So they produce a ranked list of possible potential matches. But humans suck at taking this one picture of zebra and looking at a list of other 30 zebras and figuring out, is it correct or is it not? Okay, we'll move on very quickly from this. So but humans are okay but comparing pairs, and so we can say, and this kind of approach allows us to look at different, as I said, different viewpoints, and pregnant to non-pregnant, and things like that. And as I said, we can do it for anything striped, spotted, wrinkled, notched. We also have algorithms now that have that work for different algorithms. Use the shape of the fluke or the dorsal fin of a dolphin to identify individuals. And again, produce this ranking that we can leverage our data structure as well. So, and then with information on when and where the image was taken, you can really now use images to start tracking, counting individuals and do population dynamics and species range. And so we've built a system called Wildbook. Here it is. Here's an example where here's a page of an individual in that system. So this is Wildbook, like another book, but for wildlife. So you have a picture, you have some ID. If this is social species, you can even infer who it was seen with. So it's social network and all the sightings of all the individuals. And we map all the locations. In fact, not only we take now all the pictures that are coming from, as I said, scientists, field assistants, tourists, drones, and camera traps, and everything else, but we started using social media to scrape. We started with whale sharks scraping YouTube every day for videos posted publicly. I automatically finding the ones that contain whale sharks, identifying where the what animal is in those frames, and then using natural language processing to process the information, the text around and the audio around, to figure out when and where the video was taken. And so now then automatically not only finding that this is marked individual P323, but here is a line that actually added automatically to its record. And and then we post in the comments, back in the comments of the video, hey, we found this whale shark P323 in your video. Would you like to learn more? Here's a link, and people respond, and the response is amazing. We have 50% engagement, people saying, wow, this is amazing. And in this particular one, you don't see it. It says, and you're an AI from all of humanity, please don't conquer us. So, okay. So with this, we started a few years ago with about 200 known individual whale sharks, for example. Now we have close to, this is already 1 week out of date, so we now have close to 10,000 known individuals contributed by, actually more than that, almost contributed by 55,000 volunteers, people just uploading their images, and from 55,000, more than 55,000 sightings now, contributed by almost 7,000 volunteers and 185 now scientists working on it. And in fact, we went back and checked, well, does our intelligent agent actually bring in new data? Well, yes. Not only it brings in more data it brought in the last year than all the human contributors combined. 98% of that data is unique. It's something that no human has ever seen. And that is amazing. And, right, so it can also automatically ask questions when metadata is missing. So when we don't know, when we can get from the description when or where the video was taken, it automatically asks in the comments, hey, where did you see this whale shark? And people respond, oh, last week, my family and I went on vacation and we had wonderful times and saw 7 sharks. And so we have to infer from this last week, meaning we take the current date, so all of this natural language processing conversation and all of the machine learning that went into designing this translates very nicely into these AI agent. People engage, people are informed about the value of their data. They really are happy to continue contributing that. But also, the important part is that we do then now we went from that 115 plus minus 20, 103,000 plus minus 27,000 to 179,000 estimate for the global population to now it is whaleshark.org, which is the Wild Book for whale sharks that produces, that gives IUCN the official population numbers globally. And a year ago, the most comprehensive study on the biology of whale sharks was published using the data from whale shark, co-authored by 36 authors, most of whom met only through the pages of Wild Book for whale sharks for the first time, because this is a global species, and there is not one research group, not one conservation organization that has the information about even one individual, right? And only by putting these puzzle pieces together, we can really find the information about the species. Sorry, a nursery in Mozambique was discovered, a new population in Madagascar, migration patterns and seasonality across the world were all discovered using this data. The first deployment of gravy zebra wild book was in Lewa Conservancy in Kenya. And one of the things that they realized, so you can now monitor the survival of the young to adulthood. And by comparing, so if you have more young than old, then it's a growing population. But if you have fewer young than old, it's a declining population, right? So it turns out that for gravy zebras, the Lewa Conservancy was really in that situation. And this is not a good situation to be in. So the main culprit, why there are not enough baby zebras surviving to adulthood? Any ideas? Well, there is no poaching in that area on zebras. Elephants, sure, but no, yeah. That's a very interesting idea. So if the population is declining, then there is inbreeding and not good survival. So no, but it's a great, great idea. Any other? Yeah. Predators. Yeah. They've done such a great job with lion conservation that you know, now there are too many lions for the number of zebras. But having the numbers in hand from Wild Book, they were able to convince Kenya Wildlife Service to start a population management program for lions to put the predator and the prey in balance, and that was based on hard evidence. And in fact, so gravy zebra are the endangered species, critically endangered species of zebra, and 98% of them are in Kenya. So to get the first population census in January 2016, hundreds of people at 45 locations all over the country were driving around taking pictures for 2 days, from school kids and tribal chiefs and rangers to US ambassador to Kenya. There is Bob Godek. And tourists with telephoto cameras took more than 40,000 images of zebras, and we've identified every single one of them and produced the most accurate population census to date at the time, but we knew we were missing one geographic area. And so the next time, last January, again, the Great Gravis Rally was run now with more than 1,000 people at, and adding also reticulated giraffe to the count. And this is not photoshopped at all. We call this emoji-raph. Do you see the heart and the smiley face right next to it? So for zebras, the numbers the numbers are about 2,700, and that now includes the area we missed last time. And this is the most accurate. So the margin of error was around 100. Right, so it's 2,700 plus minus 100. This is so good that the chief warden of Kenya Wildlife Service said this shows the use of machine learning and citizen science for conservation. And I was so excited because this is the first time Kenya Wildlife Service accepted data collected by uncertified data collectors. This is the first time that they've accepted numbers that were certified by an outside organization, WildMe, our nonprofit. And this is the first time that they've used the words machine learning in context, in a sentence, probably ever. So now this is going to become a biennial event. Every 2 years, the Great Gravis Rally and Reticulated Giraffe Count will be run by Kenyans in Kenya. And so we ask the question, can we really count using photos? Do we really produce the right numbers? And so this is another great computational question, great machine learning question. And that, so Neil is not there anymore, but this is a Neil kind of answer. You have sample points in some locations, and you need to estimate the distribution overall, right, to fit the best best distribution and produce the population distribution estimate and the numbers. But even better, turns out that you can use this. So because we're doing it over 2 days, we're using this method. It's called site-recite population estimate. So you see some number of zebras on the first day. You spray paint them, or in this case, identify them as individuals. So you know whom you've seen. You saw 100. You go out the second day. You saw another 100. Out of those, 10 you've already seen on the first day, which means, assuming that you have the same sampling regime, the number of zebras that you see represents about 10% of the total population. So you have total 1,000. And so these mark recapture methods are very much applicable in this case. And in fact, by the we also looked at the saturation curve of how many new zebras we've seen. And by mid-morning of the second day, we haven't seen any new zebras. So we now have effectively every zebra out there, we have a mug, face mug, or side mug of the animal. And again, IUCN Red List uses our official numbers for the species. as the official estimate, and it's going to be updated now every 2 years to really see with the conservation policy, which Kenya Wildlife Service, KWS, started last June based on the data. The policy was based on the data that we delivered, whether it's actually working. So we're starting to bring in data from YouTube, and the question is, and from other social media and scraping, Flickr, Instagram, and other. Are we getting anything useful out of it? And that's the question we also asked. Also, as an aside, also I would want to put a lot of caution around this, and that we're highly aware of the danger of using geotagged animal photographs and opening up these kind of data to the risk of poaching, even more so. So a lot of our databases, a lot of our wild books are closed. You have to have access and log in and everything. So we're working with cybersecurity experts to really make sure they're secure and protected. So. But the question we're now trying to figure out is, given that there's true population, and there is a bias, spatial-temporal bias, and people going out and photographing it and being able to see this animal, and then deciding to actually take a picture of the animal, given that they saw it. And we have some preliminary data where on the same drive, some people take pictures only of birds because they're birders, and others only of cats, and others just take picture of, for the first hour, of every zebra and impala that they see, and then they don't take pictures of anything other than rhinos. And then given that, deciding to post it on social media, and then for us, using whatever methods to scrape with the different restrictions the different APIs have, and building models and producing a population estimate from those images. And the question is, can we estimate the error can we really use that to estimate the population? And so we've done quite a bit of work recently, and I'll do it very, very I'll skip the whole thing because I have 1 minute, but I'll do it very high level. So the answer is, it's a learnable problem. So we can not only learn the bias forward not only we can learn the bias forward on, I'm gonna skip much faster than this, on whether an image is going to be shared on social media, but we can also learn the bias backwards on, given that the image was shared, what's the number of images that were likely taken from which this image was shared, and then given that estimate, what's the initial population size that was present when the photographer photographed. So it is a learnable problem where we still need a lot more training data and many more experiments to really get to the point where we can do population size estimates purely from social media data. But it is certainly a good data to use to augment all the other kind of data. Right. And I'm happy to talk about what are the hard things there and where we are right now. But at this point, so we have about a dozen of these wild books and growing in number for more than 20 species, ranging from zebras, giraffes to whale sharks and whales and dolphins. And one of our latest projects, this is with WWF, is the Internet of Turtles, the real IoT. All right. But it takes not only a village, it takes the entire planet to really put a project like this together. We have thousands of scientists engaged with tens of thousands of volunteers and many contributors at different levels that really ensure that we can take machine learning and data science, which allow us to go from pixels and sound waves and sensors to science, conservation, and public engagement at large scale and high resolution over time, space, and individuals. Thank you.